Take your seat, movie fans. The film is about to start. Welcome to Craft Disservices, the show where we look at the bad films of cinematic history, the movies that critics rejected but audiences embraced. I'm your host, Aaron Coker, a.k.a. Caliban. I'm also the host of the Just Enough Trope podcast and the Enterprising Individuals podcast on the Just Enough Trope network. You can find out more at justenoughtrope.com. Returning to the show today as our guest, it's Jacob Gulliver of Hot Chocolate Media. Hi, Jacob.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Aaron.
Thank you so much for being back. If I'm not mistaken, you were our first guest. So
that sounds right.
Welcome back. Yeah, it's about time. Have you seen any good films lately?
Oh, man. I've seen lots of good films lately.
Pick three.
I saw Incredibles 2 recently, which I very much enjoyed. Certainly not perfect, but good. I saw Upgrade. Was the indie pick from Blumhouse.
Oh, sure.
Definitely got to check that one out if you haven't yet. There's some big dumb moments in it, but the overall really strong piece, and for the budget they had, it looks amazing. I just watched Logan Lucky recently.
Oh, okay,
That was excellent. I hadn't seen it. I missed it last year, but it was good.
Yeah, I felt like that one really went under the radar, and I think like heist films are still kind of big. And I was surprised as a Soderbergh movie with a bunch of stars in it. It was just kind of like, yeah, it's okay. And then I found out it was written by what was the deal? Like it was the screenwriter on the film that was credited had no credits before, and everybody figured that it was Soderbergh just doing it under a pseudonym. But it turns out that his wife actually wrote it, and she just didn't want to be seen as, you know, Soderbergh's wife, Mrs. Soderbergh. And so, but yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed it. I thought the characters were really great, and it was, you know, not super high stakes, but it was just kind of fun. Daniel Craig was kind of weird.
All of the performances had little elements of weirdness.
Yeah.
I loved that about it.
Yeah.
They're willing to get a little quirky with the personalities.
Yeah, I like quirky. We talked about a quirky film a couple months ago for a April Fool's show on Enterprising Individuals.
This is true.
Talked about...
I had a tough time explaining that one to Facebook. I wrote that post like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
I was like, how do I explain what is happening here unless you're kind of in on the joke?
Yeah. I think the way I did that was no joke. It's just all straight. Do it straight.
Yeah.
And we did. We actually had an interesting discussion about the movie Incubus.
Yeah.
Which I don't think would ever show up on this program. I don't think anybody would be willing to die to defend the virtue of Incubus. But,
sure.
You know, I had not seen it before. I had heard, you know, there was this horrible movie that was all in Esperanto. And there's a skeleton of an idea there. I mean, you can see things that you could pull out and be sort of fascinated by.
Definitely dark for the time. They're willing to, you know, cross some boundaries that I think a lot of other productions probably weren't.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Yeah, and it was by Leslie Stevens, the Outer Limits guy. Yeah, the
Yep.
script. So that was fun. Speaking of movies, and we are, of course, you've got the Movie Machine.
Yes, yeah,
I do
a podcast, which Aaron has been on twice now. Well, more than that, but we do recording sessions and, you know, batches. And it's basically an improv game where we make up a movie super fast based on a random suggestion from the internet. We each take a fictional role in this production, and you know, it's very silly and fun, and it has a lot of good pop culture jokes, and we get to pretend to be weird characters. And usually goes off the rails very fast in a very entertaining way.
Yeah, but that's the point. I also, I think one of our episodes was about trying to get basketball players to be in like a Pirates of the Caribbean type movie.
Yeah.
And like 2 days after that, I went to a film and I saw the preview for Uncle Drew, which is a movie with a bunch of basketball players who are all playing like these funny roles. And I thought, oh my God, I think we came up with something there.
Right, yeah.
There's a movie machine running in Hollywood for sure. They're getting some of these ideas, I think. Let's talk about the Minnesota Fringe, too. What's Hot Chocolate doing at the Fringe this year?
Yeah, so Kyle, my business partner, Kyle Decker, and I, we wrote this show called Remy Raygun of the Space Brigade, Choose Your Own Space Opera.
Okay.
It is a all-ages, family-friendly sci-fi show where the audience can actually make decisions in the middle for the character to follow.
Okay.
So we're kind of following along with this person who's reading a book exploring the life of the kind of atypical, pulpy sci-fi hero Remy Raygun and her adventures through space. It's really silly and fun. Lots of like kind of like dumb kiddie jokes like that, sold by very professional actors is extremely entertaining. And we have, the branching paths and like the way that stories play out, I think is pretty satisfying.
Okay.
We spend a good amount of time trying to figure out like, how do we make this matter later? And how does this particular element work this way?
Sure.
So, yeah, I think it's going to be really fun. And if you're going to be at the Minnesota Fringe Festival, definitely swing by and check it out.
So when the paths branch, do you have like a scene written for the direction that can go, or?
Yep. So basically there's a choice in Act 1 and Act 2 that mean a path goes a different way. Mm-hmm. And then there's 2 versions of Act 3 and 2 versions of Act 4 in entirety.
Okay.
Based on the decision that was made in Act 1 and Act 2.
Okay, sure. And then you've gone through and made sure that, like, okay, so that this can track then no matter what we do. All right, that's so cool. I'm sure, like, having improv experience is going to help with that, because it's like, they chose what? Okay, well, where are we going here? What are we doing?
Right.
Which hat am I putting on? Or space helmet in this case.
Right.
And also I wanted to mention that you will be representing Hot Chocolate Media at Convergence this year.
That's true. Yes.
Great. Yeah.
We're doing a live episode of The Movie Machine. It's Sunday at 3 o'clock, I believe. I'm sure you can look it up on the Convergence site if you're interested.
Sure.
And then we've got Brian Salisbury of the Junk Food Cinema podcast as our guest, so that's going to be really exciting.
Don't go listen to that. No plugs for other movie shows, but yeah, that's really exciting.
Well, I mean, all movie shows should love each other's movie shows. That's the way I feel.
I can get into that.
Yeah.
Well, that's really cool. If listeners don't know, but if they're going to be in the Twin Cities area or they live around the Midwest, they should definitely check out and know about Convergence. You can find Convergence at convergence-con.org, I think, off the top of my head, is the
Sounds
website.
right.
Yeah. And we'll be there. Craft Disservices as well, representing the show. I'm doing a panel on guilty pleasure movies.
Nice.
Which is basically, I consider that the Craft Disservices panel. So a lot of people are going to be defending their guilty pleasures. And tickets are still available. You can get them again at convergence-con.org. Well, we should get into the format of this show. The name of the show is Craft Disservices, of course. On every episode of this podcast, we look at a film that is poorly rated, generally lower than 50% on Rotten Tomatoes, but a movie that's well remembered by audiences at large, or in the case of today's film, a misunderstood masterpiece? Or is it a mass-understood masterpiece? And if you think that doesn't make sense, try untangling this movie. The hardest part of space rollerblading is explaining how you lost your wings, I think. So today we're talking about 2015's Jupiter Ascending. Now, before we continue, I always have to state for the record when we do the show is not in the pocket of Big Tomato. We don't endorse Rotten Tomatoes. We're not connected to them. We just use the movie's aggregate score as a benchmark for how the film was received by critics upon its release, and how that compares to the audience's perception of the movie. We'll talk about the film's cinema score as well, the score that's derived from exit interviews with audience members in a bit. First, though, I've got a question for you. I know you'll have an opinion on this. There's a lot of hay being made recently about the perceived divide between critics and audiences when it comes to film ratings. Critics and moviegoers don't always see eye to eye on if a movie's good or not, but the divide between the opinions of professional reviewers and the Joe Schmoes seems to be a real point of contention these days. You've got recent releases like Hereditary getting a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes, but a D+ on Cinema Score. Even Solo got an A- on Cinema Score, but only like a 70, 71 on Rotten Tomatoes. So what do you think is the source of that divide between the two scores?
I think it's people looking for different things in movies, to be honest. I remember a panel at Convergence many years ago where C. Robert Cargill said, find a reviewer that you love, and they will probably be a good guess for whether or not the movie that you're going to like is the one that you like.
Okay.
If you find a review just randomly somewhere online and you find yourself disagreeing with something somebody says in there, then the next review you read is probably going to make you feel the same way.
Okay, sure.
So I that always stuck with me, and I thought that was a great way to think about it.
Yeah.
So, the people that I talk about movies with and, are interested the same way that I am. We tend to like a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah.
But, I completely get there's other factions of humanity that have different, requirements for what makes a good movie for them.
And critics are just human beings.
Right.
My human beings, I own human beings. My friends are also human beings, and I sometimes feel pressured to like something my friends like because I don't want to be that guy that's like, ugh, this thing. And I wonder, critics must face similar pressures like within their industry to say, boy, everybody seems to hate this movie. Richard Roper says this is a piece of crap. Like, do I say?
Yeah.
And depending on like what type of person that is, if they're like a real iconoclast, then they're like, screw this movie, I don't care. Or they're like, yeah, it's fine. This is one of the reasons that Rotten Tomatoes just doesn't work for me, is because you can read a review and it's clear that the person is like, this wasn't really that great, but they never come out and say it's a garbage fire. And so technically that's like a C plus, or something.
Yeah.
So it gets a fresh, when clearly this person had a lot of problems with the film. I read a lot, I don't know if I should, but as a critic myself, I read a lot of other critics' work. And I find more and more a perception from critics that critiques or criticism is under attack, especially recently by this element of toxic fandom that seems to be present, having these strong, weird reactions to things, like the sort of debate over The Last Jedi. What do you think about that?
Sure. I mean, I enjoyed it.
The Last Jedi? Yeah.
It's certainly not my favorite Star Wars movie, but I definitely enjoyed it. I think the biggest, outcry has either been the, racist and sexist comments, or we wish Luke had more hope left in him.
Yeah.
But, I think the movies reflect, a different level than we had been seeing in Star Wars movies before. Yeah. And every time I go to a new movie, I go because I want to see something I've never seen before.
Yeah.
And that was definitely a movie that I'd never seen before, even though it was a Star Wars movie.
Oh, certainly.
So I think they did some really original things. There's, little elements here and there I don't agree with, but I certainly wouldn't step on it the way that so many people have. The structure is great. The storytelling is excellent.
Yeah.
Performances are excellent. I don't, regardless of whether or not you like the movie, you can't say that the movie wasn't done well.
Yeah, exactly.
In my mind.
Yeah. I mean, when I think about bad movies that deserve a D- or whatever people are giving it, like it's nowhere near that. Like it's a great looking, well-made film with a lot of great moments, whether or not you agree with certain elements and philosophies that you see in it.
Right.
The whole casino thing, though, come on. But anyway.
Yeah, I would agree that the Canto Bite scene is the weakest.
And I don't know if it's like a generational thing, like with, I won't say how old I am, but like kids these days. But if I have if I don't like a film, and there have been plenty of films that I don't like, I'm like, well, it's not that great. And then I just kind of go home and forget about it. But the people just get on the internet. That's their first instinct, and just scream about it. Yeah. And I almost see it on the other side as well. Like, I don't think that anybody who just makes a piece of art deserves to be pilloried for something. But you see a lot of these creators like hitting back in a way that's like, oh no, don't, just let your art stand.
Yeah.
Like people criticized Godzilla, the most recent Godzilla film, and Jordan Vogt Roberts, the director, went on this like campaign. He went on YouTube videos and he's like, hey guys, don't stop it, don't be mean. It's like, don't do that. I know you're like a millennial, but is this generational thing where you just, everybody has to know your opinion. It's available, it's online, so you have to hear what it is. Just make your film and just be interesting. You think that, but I'm going to make another great movie and you can just go watch that too.
Yeah. I mean, in the old days it would have been, write an angry letter and maybe you hear back. But
yeah.
In the, current level of technology with social media, we have people directly involved with things like movies instantly accessible.
Yeah.
Through their own accounts on those social media sites. So
right. But if I'm Ryan Johnson,
angry,
if I'm Ryan Johnson, I don't feel the need to like jump on and answer every, Twitter comment or something.
And I've honestly I don't know if you saw, there's this thing where there's a bunch of just like woman-hating monsters who are like trying to get a fan campaign put together to remake The Last Jedi. I know. Ryan Johnson, to his credit, was like, oh my God, please try.
Yeah.
Because he wants to see them set them up to fail, essentially.
Yeah.
He wants to see them, build.
I think he stopped just short of actually donating to it.
Right.
But I might have just donated if I was him.
So, but yeah, that's, good for him for, having a sense of humor about it.
Yeah. Well, you have to.
Right.
Well, our film today did not evoke much of a reaction from critics or audiences on its release, but over time, I think it's accrued a following from a corner of fandom that seems to represent an antidote to toxicity, which can only be a good thing.
Yes.
Jupiter Ascending was written and directed, of course, by Lana and Lily Wachowski, probably best known for the Matrix trilogy, and it is to date their last feature that they have done, their most recent feature film. And, of course, They have a very varied resume. Would you consider yourself a Wachowski fan?
I would say so. There's ins and outs with my fandom for them.
Sure.
I enjoyed The Matrix. I don't think I loved it the way that everybody else on the planet did.
Interesting.
But I was a teenager at the time, and my interests were in different places as well. So
also interesting. Yeah. Okay. You had to be like the disaffected 21-year-old or whatever I was at the time, I guess, to really get into it. Sure. I will say they did induct it into the Library of Congress, so sure. because it's culturally significant.
I like it.
So, as somebody who is sort of, I like it about The Matrix, why did you choose Jupiter Ascending to talk about today?
I think it's original.
Okay.
So many of the movies that come out are just kind of, recycles of other junk we've seen before.
Okay.
There's a bunch of movies that come out now, and it's just like, okay, so this is Transformers with this skin on it. Oh, okay, so this is Fast and the Furious with this skin on it. Mm-hmm. Or, this is, a superhero movie, but with this skin over the top. Mm-hmm. And it's, I feel like I've seen a lot of those sort of movies, and a lot of the like mainstays and tentpole films are kind of falling into that category now because the studios are looking for what's safe and will make them a ton of money.
Formula, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But Jupiter Ascending, I think, was original. They came up with a really cool concept. They created some visuals and some kind of, bizarre characterizations that I think we hadn't seen on film before. Mm-hmm. And they took that to a very large scale. They spent tons of money making it look really cool and exciting.
Yeah, $176 million.
Yeah. So, I want to reward that originality.
Sure. I've heard it said that the Wachowskis never repeat themselves, and I would agree with that. Their IMDb page is it's a bingo card of genres and styles, and even MPAA ratings. This is rated PG-13. Mm-hmm. Speed Racer was PG, and I think most of the rest of their stuff is rated R generally.
Can't wait for that G film.
The which one?
The G film.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah.
Curious to see what they do for
that. What would
that.
they even do? I know that they are heavily influenced by anime.
Sure.
And so I don't know. Maybe they could make a live action Miyazaki film or something like that.
That
God
awesome.
forbid. But yeah, I'd like to see something like that. And I said before that the budget for this is $176 million. It made $184 million internationally, so just barely made the budget back there. It actually premiered at the Sundance Film Festival on January 25th of 2015 in a surprise premiere. It was kind of like they got a bunch of people together and went, "Hey, check this out." And reaction was pretty much what it was in the general public when the film came out on February 6th of 2015. We'll get to the ratings of the film. It is rated 26% on Rotten Tomatoes. It is at a 40 on Metacritic and a 5.3 on IMDb. So kind of right down the middle there. And the cinema score for the film was a B-. So that's sort of the funny thing about cinema score, and that's a whole nother podcast, but I feel like it's either feast or famine. It's either, it was all right, or it was, oh yeah, this is really great.
Yeah.
Like
the
any
greatest movie
Marvel movie
ever made ad infinitum.
Yeah, or it's, I have no idea what's going on. Hereditary, D-.
Yeah.
So the fact that it's B-, I think it's very rare that you see a B- on Cinema Score. I think people literally came out and you were either like mind blown, or you were like, what was that?
Sure.
Scratching your head. Which is, again, I think it just shows this sort of divide in people's opinion about the movie. I hope there won't be a divide in between on this podcast, but I guess we'll find out as we get into the film. I'm
guessing you're leaning more towards that confused side.
Confusion for sure.
Yeah.
Not straight out. Let's petition Warner Brothers to make a new one.
Right.
Last Jedi-ness. But can you summarize the film? Can the film be summarized?
Sure. I would say that it is about our titular Jupiter, who is a member of a massive farm, which is Earth.
So far, so good.
Yep. Humanity has existed long before we know it, and the highest echelons of humanity have their own planets where they farm other humans to prolong their life indefinitely. Mm-hmm. And she is a genetic reoccurrence of essentially like the queen of these humans. And her DNA matches or has lined up in this way to make her possibly royalty. And that puts their empire in threat because she has this now, sudden claim to nobility.
Right.
and can take over that empire. So this normal girl who cleans toilets for a living
Right.
suddenly is thrust into intergalactic politics and all of the cool sci-fi junk that comes with it.
Sure. Yeah, it's sci-fi junk ensues.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good summary. I think many people, when they were detracting or criticizing the film, would cite the incoherent screenplay. But like you just presented, I think the narrative's pretty straightforward. You know, it's girl meets dog boy, girl finds out she owns the earth, dog boy fights dragon man. You know, the Danish girl is whisper screaming at everybody. I mean, what's the problem here? Bees can sense royalty.
Yeah.
You know, it all works out. The Wachowskis, a lot of their films, they really run the gamut in terms of critical reception. I think most of their films trend on the higher scale or on the positive scale. But this film was the lowest rated film that they had directed, at least on Rotten Tomatoes. So I wonder if that is, just like we said before, people being confused, or if it's sort of a referendum on space films. I mean, that can't be true because just a year before, Guardians of the Galaxy destroyed it. So I wonder why people just reacted so much to this. Don't they love Channing Tatum? Doesn't everybody love Channing Tatum? What's the problem here?
Yeah.
What's the biz?
And, to that note, I'll be honest. When I first saw the posters and the trailer and stuff, I thought oh man, Mila Kunis and Channing Tater-tots. I don't know if I'm gonna like this. But the girlfriend wanted to go see it, and I was like, yeah, why not? You know, Wachowskis are interesting. We'll see what they came up with. And walked in, and I was pleasantly surprised. I was like, hey, this is not bad. I'm digging this. So I think, to their credit, I think both actors were pushed out of their comfort zones a fair bit. You know, Mila Kunis tends to do the sort of, sex comedy or, kind of cheap laugh type humor roles.
Sure.
And, actually was presented with some interesting and complex scenarios in this to react to and get involved in. And she did a great job. Yeah. I was very pleasantly surprised by that performance. And Channing had a lot of, strong silent type moments where normally he's kind of the charming, talky type character. Sure. So it was nice to see him get some challenging moments and see him reacting to things happening and learn about his character that way, as opposed to, getting tons of him explaining how he feels about everything.
Yeah, well, we don't get that. Yeah. He's actually in a lot of films that I like, and I don't know what it is about him. He's, to me, like the pasta salad of actors in that I would never reach for pasta salad. I always go, pasta salad, I'm going to pass that up. But if I have a good pasta salad, it's like, all right, this is pretty good. Right, yeah. But every single time I have to be reconvinced to watch it. Like we were talking about Logan Lucky. He was great in that. Yeah. And... But yet, I'm sure the next film that he's in, it's going to be, we got to sell it all over again. Oh, Channing Tatum, and I go watch it. This guy's pretty good. Yeah, he's good in the Jump Street movies, which require a lot of where we were talking before about that sort of improv comedy sort of talent that I wouldn't expect this former stripper to have. But he's got it going on. So in many ways, the script was of course written by the Wachowskis. I have to confess, I don't really know their process, and I'm sure there's plenty of behind the scenes things where they talk about it. But if one is mainly the script person and one is the directing person, or if they both do everything equally. Although I did learn in researching for the film that Lana cites The Wizard of Oz and also The Odyssey as inspirations for the story, which I think that comes through.
Yeah, that comes through for sure.
Yeah. And they got their start writing films. Of course, they did Bound in 1996 was the first thing that they wrote and directed. But they wrote, I didn't know this, the movie Assassins. Do you know the movie Assassins?
I don't.
Starring Antonio Banderas and Sylvester Stallone. It might be on this show someday, if it's my choice. Sure. It is a just balls out sort of bugfuck movie that got it's even lower than its critics hated it. And the script was actually rewritten a lot by the director. So the Wachowskis, actually, that's one of the reasons they decided to get into directing, because they'd have the power. Because they were like, we can't just live in Hollywood and have our stuff be rewritten. We have this vision. But it's a fun movie. So I don't know, maybe someday. But once they turned to directing to preserve their ideas, here we go. Now you've got these, writer-director combo, creators. Do you think that they're better writers or directors, or do you think one comes out in front of the other?
I think they're better directors. There are definitely places in most of their movies where I was like, that line could have gone.
There's a lot of examples. This is exposition heavy sort of film.
Sure.
And they always say in film, like, show, don't tell. But when you've got like this universe with liquid soylent green and all these things that you have to explain, you need somebody that's got to tell you that stuff.
Right.
And yet I felt like there was so many parts in the movie where it was like, you guys are doing a great job of showing. I don't think you need to tell so much. Like in the beginning of the film, like you said, she's cleaning toilets, Jupiter, and she's like, I hate my life. A couple times she says that. And it's like, no, I understand. This doesn't look like a super cool life. You know, you're living with 14 cousins or whatever and cleaning toilets at 4:30 in the morning. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
I would also agree that directing is probably their strength. Although, once again, I'm more up on The Matrix than you are, I guess. I'd feel like The Matrix, in terms of balancing that, telling the exposition, setting up the world, and yet leaving some surprise and finding a way to do it in an interesting way. Like the rabbit hole speech in Matrix is, for me, the best example of that. There's nothing in this film that matches him talking about the Matrix, and saying, it's all around you when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. Like, he's still not really telling us anything until we get that moment where he goes to the rabbit hole and you realize, oh, this is totally different. It's the Wizard of Oz moment, to use Lana's example, where it's all black and white until you step through the door and it's Technicolor. Right. And this film starts, they make the mistake, in my opinion, of starting it. I mean, it starts with a flashback to her life. But then we immediately cut to the Abraxas family, not knowing who they are. And I wish that they had held it back for some kind of Wizard of Oz door moment where we just think, is this going to be some chick in Chicago just cleaning toilets for the whole movie? And then you get that suddenly it's Dog Boys there and we go out into space and it's like, oh my God. Did you see John Carter?
I did not.
You did not?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if I can ruin anything except for not a great movie.
Yeah.
But they do the exact same thing. It starts, medias res is a great way to start, but it starts right away and there's all these crazy things. And it's like the whole point is he is transported to a magic land. So let's take that trip with him.
Yeah, I can see your frustration there. I would agree that there's definitely places in the movie where they tell things out of order and it's a little clunky. And that's definitely one of them. I think that the beginning could have been stronger in that sense.
Yeah.
But I think kind of her experiencing, I like her experiencing the little kind of gray alien creatures when she's going to donate her eggs.
Yeah.
And the, like that weirdness. And then she goes back to like her normal life. And I like that there's that element of like, did that really happen or did that not really happen? And then it kind of continues to progress from there.
But if we saw it from her, I like that sort of, interrupted enlightenment kind of thing. But if we saw it from her perspective and it was a mystery to us as well, then once we finally, she's just going for this routine procedure, where they harvest her eggs. And then it's like, no, you're floating now. This is really real. And then Channing Tater-tots is just zipping all over the room. It's like, what is going on? Yeah. But we've already seen spaceships and we've seen Baiduna in a weird blue wig, and we know that the dramatic irony doesn't really work, for me at least, like her being cut off from this world and we knowing that there's this weird stuff out there. Sure. Also, like, they're really comfortable. We go back to their directing skills. The Wachowskis, like, they're really comfortable with this visual spectacle, and I think that that's great. They took a lot of time building up a lot of the things you see in the movie. Titus's ship, that's like this cathedral, like inside, is like really cool. Yeah. And the way that they just present that, just matter of factly, is great. But again, if we could sort of see that through her eyes, like her experiencing this larger world, I just think that would be, I don't know, that'd be more effective. Did you see Cloud Atlas?
I haven't seen Cloud Atlas.
See, I haven't seen that one either. Yeah. So we're not the Wachowski experts.
Yeah, I've seen little clips of it, but
yeah. I think that from what I've heard, Cloud Atlas is probably the film that has the most acting talent, like, on screen that they've ever worked with. And I think they are definitely the masters of conceptualizing a space, for an action scene or the action, like, of a film, constructing a scene. But I don't know if they really can pull great things out of actors, like if they're an actors directors, because you get there. Yeah, there's bad lines in this film, but I think like a good director could get an actor to deliver it in like a way that really works. Yeah. And Yeah, just there's some unconvincing sort of delivery of, let's face it, kind of borderline dialogue in this. Some Meryl Streep could make. I love dogs. I've always loved dogs. She can make that work, but it's just kind of more matter of fact for Mila Kunis.
Sure.
I want to talk about Mila Kunis, our heroine, of this film, Jupiter or Jupe. I know that you said before you're like, oh no, Mila's in this,
Yeah.
But how do you think that she does in this film? How do you think she sort of pulls it off?
I think she did surprisingly well. I mean, again, she's not Meryl Streep, but
Well, no.
I think she does a very convincing job of playing this role.
Yeah.
And, not just playing herself with a skin on top like her other type of movies.
Right, yeah.
To get back to that sort of feeling that I was talking about before. Her typical fare is much different than this. I think she allows herself to become kind of absorbed into this characterization, into this world more than I've seen from her in other films.
Yeah. I wasn't a huge fan of Black Swan, but I thought that she was pretty good in that. It's a small role, but
Sure.
yeah, I think she gets trapped in this sort of pull between, the whole point is she's supposed to be, maybe mundane is the wrong word, but a more conventional person who's introduced to this weird world. And if she's a mundane person, then how does she play it? If her reaction to things is supposed to be, wow, right. I don't know anything about this, then is she just kind of the boring sort of black and white label generic character?
Yeah.
Or can she affect in this world some way?
Right.
And I don't think that they ever necessarily break out of that. She does a lot of falling off of things for a movie that's called Jupiter Ascending. The way they put her in peril a lot is she's falling off the Sears Tower. She's falling into the great red spot of Jupiter. She's just always plummeting somewhere and going, and getting picked up by a guy on space rollerblades, which is cool.
Yeah.
Space rollerblades should have been the next
best.
bullet time.
Yeah, it's the best. I have a special connection to the space rollerblades.
Oh, boy.
My late father was a mathematician, and he specialized in differential geometry. That was his specialty.
Okay, sure.
So when he has the line about differential curves
right.
that he rides, I'm like, oh, I know what that means.
Yeah.
I'm not
I know what it's supposed to mean.
But yeah, I know exactly what he's talking about.
Right.
So yeah, I was very excited at that moment because I was like, hey, they brought in some real world science to like coat the goofy sci-fi thing like they did in the old Star Treks and stuff.
Right.
Like, so I was very pleased at that moment specifically.
They definitely have a love, I think, for science and kind of intellectualism, and definitely philosophy that kind of comes into their films a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm still waiting for them to kind of level up past the kind of pop psychology or like the sophomore year world religion student that they've kind of suffused their films with. It's present in The Matrix for sure, but definitely in the sequels.
Yeah.
This, I don't know if you watch Sense8 at all, but I find
I've seen a little bit of it, but I haven't seen the whole thing.
We like The Matrix, for instance. I think it really works because it's clean. We get it. It's digital Buddhism, basically. Let go. There is no spoon, that sort of thing. Yeah. But there's endless scenes in Reloaded and Revolutions where characters are talking about fate, and there's heavy-handed symbolism, and there's characters with like specifically religious names.
I'm not all that excited.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it starts to become the anime tropes that it's inspired by, where people just talk forever, about like, well, this is how the Sephiroth works or whatever. It's like, all right, let's get back to the jet boots. Come on.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk more about the cast here. We talked about Mila Kunis already. Of course, we talked about Channing Tatum. As this goes on, there's a lot of names here that you may or may not recognize, listener, but I'd say the first person we'd have to talk about, other than the leads, would be, of course, Eddie Redmayne.
Yeah.
Who a lot of hullabaloo was made over the fact that he was nominated for The Danish Girl, I think, while this movie was in theaters. So people saw this, and they're like, this guy's going to get an Oscar for playing Danish Girl? But I don't know. I think it's a little more nuanced than that. What did you think of his portrayal of Balaam Abrasix?
I really liked it. I thought he kind of took on this sort of very polar type character where everything was
bipolar.
Sort of like well, he either kind of he made his opinion known very clearly and concisely when he was calm, or he would like burst over the top into this like encompassing rage. And the moments when he was more, wrathful or intense were made more, attention grabbing by that.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's a very recognizable actor just because of the way his face is built.
Yeah.
And, you know, his body language. But I think he did a good job of stepping outside of that and creating this sort of personality and this kind of, you know, odd, noble, effete type,
Right.
you know,
Right.
characterization. I thought that was really interesting. Certainly, it's campy. It's not
Yes.
if you're not into like sci-fi, if you're, you know, expecting to see a type of performance you'd see in a movie, a biopic like The Danish Girl.
Yeah.
Like, of course, you're not going to look at this performance and think, boy, this is a real guy.
Well, yeah.
But man, he's cool as a sci-fi villain.
He's a human alien from space. He's not supposed to be real. Yeah. I pity the poor audio engineer though that had to pick up all of his whisper talking. And then and then he'd scream, and it's like, whoa, it's blowing it out.
They probably just did ADR later.
Yeah, of course, positively, yeah. He's definitely different. As we said before, and this is usually, you know, near the end of the show, we talk about like highlights and some of our favorite moments. I'll drop this in really fast. I'm not like a big History Channel like aliens like type guy, but I love this idea of like humanity originating somewhere else and then being seeded, you know, on planets that we get introduced to. So these are human people that we can relate to, but not because they're thousands of years old and they whisper shout and stuff like that. And I thought that
species has diverged since then. The cultures they were raised in are very different.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. And I think that
sense.
His alienness, you know, works in that way. What doesn't work for me is just before he dies, spoiler alert, I hope you've watched this movie if you're listening to this show, we get like a flash of sort of relatability in that, yes, he killed Sapphira or whatever, but maybe she asked him to, maybe he's been trying to work out this grief and this feeling of responsibility over the years. But for most of the movie, he's just kind of the, you know, bad guy, like the sort of matinee villain type thing. And usually like good villains, you know, think they're right, or we can, you know, find something to kind of hook into in them. And yeah, he's basically just the guy that yells at everybody. And then he tries to kill Jupiter with a pipe or whatever at the end of the movie.
It felt kind of Shakespearean to me, you know, in the vein of, you know, nobility or families that are kind of all vying for throne in the various different Shakespeare plays in that sense.
Yeah.
Most like big sci-fi villains, what they want is like order in my vision of order.
Yeah.
That's sort of motivation for most of like the big tropey villains. And I saw that here. Sure, it's not all that, you know, original or compelling, but you know, it works for me in that sense.
Yeah.
I understand that characterization. I understand the way that they've written that part.
Yeah. And plus something that I think that also gets dropped with all the lasers flying is the fact that they introduce this idea of, you know, time is the real killer here. You know, it doesn't matter what you can accomplish we're all trying not to die. And so our solution to that is, you know, liquefy planets. But if he had tried to kind of sell her on it, or, you know, these are just prisoners or something like that. We take 100 rapists and get the best juices out of them. And like, that's how we can make the Restorax or whatever it is. They never really, their removed morality. They're well, like you said, they've evolved differently. And so they're so separated from this. Yeah, we blow up planets. What's the problem? But, so you can never really go, he's got to get, this is no Killmonger. You never go like, good point. You know, like, all right, screw this guy. Yeah. His sister and brother are played by Tuppence Middleton and Douglas Booth. Tuppence Middleton is another face that you'll see in a lot of Wachowski productions as Khalik. And Douglas Booth as Titus. I saw him there's a pretty good BBC miniseries of Great Expectations that he plays Pip in. That's the one where Gillian Anderson plays Mrs. Havisham. She's really good in that.
Cool.
Other than that, just kind of blandly good-looking people who are there to provide complications as the plot goes forward.
Yeah. I was not familiar with any of their other roles at a glance, but sure, if I comb through their IMDb page, I might be able to find something else that was interesting.
Titus is an interesting figure because he seems like he's kind of on board, like he's a good guy trying to help out, and then it turns out that he just wants kind of what his brother has.
Yeah.
So, you know, we expect a twist or a betrayal like that from a villain. Kalik is a mystery to me, though, because she's the one that kind of gets Jupiter into this in the first place, and then she just kind of does a fade, and she's not really part of the film after that.
Yeah.
And I thought it would be interesting to have her return, at the end, or just be involved somehow in the film's climax. But she's really just the kind of first guide that kind of gets her into this world, and then it's like, all right, see ya, I'm just going to take a bath or something like that, which is kind of disappointing.
Yeah, I agree. I would say that Titus was the weakest part of the movie for me.
Yeah.
I felt like, every time he was on screen, I was like, that's a shit-eating grin, man. Like, how does everyone not immediately see through your dumbass?
Right.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the charm of a Tom Hiddleston, for instance. It's like, I know this guy's going to betray me, but let's hear what he has to say. Hope he doesn't stab me later on. And then everybody else, I mean, there's nobody really to point out. I said Baiduna before plays Razo, one of the sort of mercenary guys.
I
but
love
of course,
mercenaries.
They're really cool. She's got that cool like hover bike too, but then they just kind of disappear and they're gone. Maria Doyle Kelly is somebody you might recognize. She plays, she's on Orphan Black for a while. And she's been a character actress. A lot of the people that appear in this film are character actors or lesser-known actors who you would see a lot on like BBC shows. Like I feel like the Wachowskis were just like watching like BBC America late one night, and they're like, "Give me that one. What about that one? Oh, she's good. Get her."
Yeah.
And they populate this world of characters.
It's cheaper than Keanu. Bring them on.
Yeah, exactly. Characters who, by the way, there is like a Lucasian level of character naming in this film.
Oh,
like
I love
come on, let's go some of these. We'll talk about the significance of Abraxas later on, but there's phylopericardium, which is just like what happens if you mix a cardiologist in like a Greek restaurant.
Yeah.
There's Maledictes. Wonder if that's a good guy. Oh, wait a minute. There's Chicanery Knight, which is just... they just call Mr. On the Nose. What about that?
Yeah.
I like the fact that everybody refers to each other as like Mr. and then their ridiculous name. Like it's this is very formal thing in the universe.
Oh yeah.
They reminded me of Dark City a lot. Like
Mr.
Book and Mr.
Good comparison.
Hand. Yeah.
I dig that.
And of course, somebody who we need to talk about merely because it could launch an entire conversation about what they were going for here. But Terry Gilliam appears in this film in the most Gilliam-esque sequence, a sequence that is clearly inspired by Brazil. It's, of course, the sequence in the middle of the film where they're going through all the bureaucratic red tape to get Jupiter's queenship validated or whatever it is. And as you watch it, you go, this feels a lot like Brazil. And then the bridge keeper himself shows up at the end of the thing, and you're like, okay, all right, so now Terry Gilliam's in this movie. What did you make of it?
I really enjoyed that scene. It was the one moment in the scene where we get to see how the rest of this society in space lives.
Yeah.
And, we get the sense that it's like insanely multicultural. The technology is crazy. But, they still have everyday problems.
Yeah.
And that was very like a humanizing moment. Like they're not, space elves at this point. There are still like
they're kind
humans.
of are, but yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
And they're bigger problems too. I mean, like there's the wah joke like about the DMV, but we wait in line at the DMV, but they're so far beyond us, even their administrative problems are galactic in scale.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, I can kind of see that.
Yeah.
I think maybe there was more of that late night cable going on and they saw Brazil. I mean, there's literally a man with wings here, that's going to save a woman. So,
yeah, forget the wings. You should have kept the boots. Boots better.
What is it? Yeah, right. Yeah. And plus, so Sean Bean. Oh, I didn't even mention Sean Bean.
Oh, Sean Bean.
Typical of this of Sean Bean in his career. Yeah. He's the bee guy, so he's got the wings. But why does the dog guy have wings? You just have wings if you're in the Legion, I guess.
They were skyjackers, so I was presuming that they were like some variety.
They're like paratroopers.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Some variety of winged fighters. That was appealing to me. I liked that they established and continued to like make that part of the world that there are these hybrid creatures, because we had like the mousy guy who works for Belem, and we had the owl guy who works for Kalik.
Yes.
And then I think there's one other one in that bureaucracy sequence. There's somebody else in there, I think, who was like another hybrid. So we have like this running thing of hybrid people that have these different types of DNA, and that was really fascinating from a design perspective, and it was rewarding as it went on to like look and see, oh yeah, cool, and this guy's that thing. And
There's an elephant guy.
is there? Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Whose character name is Nesh, as in Ganesh.
Yeah.
Okay, come on.
Yeah.
guys.
Hang on. Sorry, the new Solo movie had a lobster man named Therm Scissor Punch.
Yeah, that's it.
So don't tell me they're not allowed to do that.
So, well, they're totally allowed, but those are totally the. This is where you just put like 4 X's in, and so that way Find and Replace will know how to come back to this. And it's like what the scripts do in 30 minutes. God, Nesh, I guess, maybe.
Or it could be they just wrote in an Elephant Man in the script, and then like when it came to be like credited, hey, what do you want to be credited as, Jeff? What's like Nesh? Do Nesh,
right? David Lynch said no. Okay, just call him Nesh, I guess. That's fine. Yeah. Well, I did enjoy that as well. I think that really we talked about Wizard of Oz, and we talked about the Odyssey. I think this is very much redolent of a fairy tale in space.
Sure.
And in a fairy tale, you need
science fantasy.
Yeah, exactly. Space opera. You need fantastical characters, animal people. I think that totally fits in. If we're going to talk now about things that we really liked about the film, sort of the highlights, I'd have to talk about the dragon men.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's what they're supposed to be called, but the guys that are like part dragon, which... And I didn't even read into this the first time I saw the film, but I think they're supposed to be like the intelligent Saurians that were on Earth initially.
They were
when
kind
humanity
of
comes in and like blows up Earth, to get rid of they maybe grabbed a couple of those guys and like put them into service. But the first time I saw the film, and I can't remember if I saw it in the theater or not, but I definitely had that sort of kind of reaction. But I thought, I remember those dragon guys, like they were cool. Especially the fight that Cain has with them at the end, that was awesome.
Yeah.
The main dragon guy's name is Sargorn, and I thought maybe the Gorn part was like a reference to Star Trek.
Sure.
Because the lizard guy's in Star Trek. Channing Tatum, of course, was a real highlight for me as maybe the fairy dogfather in this fairy tale.
It's cute.
And I was looking up, there's some behind-the-scenes things about how they did the boots, the roller skates, and they actually had like a green screen ramp that he, because he learned to rollerblade for the movie, he didn't know how, would rollerblade on, and then they would just eliminate that and then composite him into the scene, and that's how they got the feeling that he was going over these sort of ramps and around turns and stuff like that, which is brilliant. You'd think the old way to do it would be wire him up. And then we'll just have him like, well, hold your legs like this,
legs,
the Superman flying thing, the Christopher Reeve thing. But instead they just literally had him do it and then put it in the scene. And it's like, oh, that's perfect.
And the design on those boots was excellent. Every time we got a close up, I was just like, show me more of the boots. I have to know more.
Yeah.
All the little details like that in the Wachowskis movies just make me very happy.
Yeah.
They clearly, want a
thought
lot of
about
attention paid to the little details like that. And, even like, piercings on like the eyebrows of the bounty hunters and stuff like that. And it's like, oh man, this is great. Like, they really love the fun and like they're embracing this setting so much.
Yeah. They ran off the name in a couple seconds, but they definitely thought about everything else about the guy.
Right.
Like Cain, we got it.
Yeah.
There's a couple. I liked his shield, which why doesn't everybody have one of those? That was like very useful.
Yes.
And this is like pre Captain America. Actually, no, it's not. It's 2015, I guess. All right. Well, we'll give that one to him.
Okay.
But it was just like everybody should have one of these things because he could block.
Even before that, it was Phantom Menace, the Gungan shields.
Oh yeah.
So.
Oh no! Don't compare it to Phantom Menace for me. No. That's not great.
You have to admit it's much better than Phantom Menace.
Yeah. And then the one element that's a little too far is they bleach his hair or whatever. Was that to make him look more otherworldly or something?
Well, they mention there's a line about him being born half albino or something like that.
Oh, okay.
And that made him like less valuable to the gene splicer who was trying to sell that batch to the military.
Interesting.
So
this was in the film?
Yeah, I think it's a Sean Bean line when they're in Stinger's house.
There's so much. He talks for so long.
Yeah, there's a line about how they had to sell him at a discount
Okay.
to the military, but he turned out to be the best one of the whole bunch.
Yeah.
So I think that was the intention there.
I know they really they really thought about the idea of him being like a lone wolf.
Right.
Like apparently if wolves throw a wolf out of their pack or whatever, that wolf is in trouble. Like he's probably going to die unless he adapts and becomes like a one-man pack, basically. And so
Right.
I think they were really going off of that because he does. I mean, it's fine to have. I've also heard a lot of comments about people like Jupiter because she doesn't pick up a gun and isn't like a Rambet type character.
Sure.
But Tater-Tots is getting it all done here. Like he's
Yeah.
really working overtime in this movie.
Yeah, but she also doesn't, shy away from, making her voice heard or,
Yeah.
having,
I do like
having an opinion of her own.
Yeah,
So,
certainly, yeah. She doesn't care about the long-standing traditions of this world in great Buck Rogers or whatever it is, Farscape style. She's the human that walks into this like, "Hey, I'm an American, and I'm going to tell you, you think you're entitled? Let me tell you something."
Right, yeah. But she's not waiting for him to scoop her up or anything if he's not there.
Yeah, right. I like her. I
Yeah.
do like her one gun moment though, where she
Yes.
gets the gun and he's like, "You're not going to shoot me." And she's like,
Yeah.
"All right, blam."
Yeah.
He'll live. Shoots him in the leg.
Yeah.
I'd honestly watch another film in the Jupe series.
Oh, me too.
If there was one. Maybe if it was written and directed by somebody else, though.
Okay.
Because I think that that's the key for the Wachowskis. I think they should absolutely keep creating, but I think that they should establish their own house, like the House of Wachowski, become impresarios in the way that Del Toro does sometimes, where he'll come up with an idea and then like, okay, you take this and run with it, and just produce.
Matthew Vaughn.
Yeah, sure, yeah. Because they're clearly idea people, and I don't want to see them become... To me, this is kind of like their Lady in the Water. I don't want to see them become Shyamalan-esque in that he clearly has a lot of ideas as well, but he's hit the point where he is totally outstripped like his capabilities as a writer and director. And you see interviews with him, and he just looks so frustrated, and all of his comments are about how the critics hate him and stuff like that. And it's like, just have some ideas and just farm them out. Like let somebody else take a shot at them. Right. I think that would be good for them. I don't know. I know that I think only Lily worked on season 2 of Sense8, or is it Lana? One of them is sort of taking a break, and the other one was seeing Sense8 to its conclusion. And so, like, I don't want to see them get burned out.
Right.
I don't think they're working on anything now, which is sort of disappointing to me as well, because I'm a fan of them. I really do like most of their stuff. Speed Racer, I don't know.
Again, campy as shit, but entertaining.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, if you don't walk in expecting campy, then too bad. See ya.
Yeah, and they definitely have seemed to reach a particular audience with Sense8. There's a lot of people that really like that a lot. I want to talk about that audience. I usually check out YouTube or blogs for comments about the films that we talk about. And there was a surprising lack of content about Jupiter Ascending. I thought for sure I could at least find a gaggle of dudes, standing in front of a bookcase, like waiting to shit on it. And I didn't see that. I think it just sort of missed that kind of critical appreciation or disparagement. But there's one place you can find plenty of tributes to JA, as I'm going to call it, which is on Tumblr. The film has become something of a cult classic for younger, mostly sci-fi, or mostly female sci-fi fans.
Sure.
In fact, the Wikipedia page...
It's an epic romance in space.
Yeah. The Wikipedia page specifically calls out the, quote, niche of female science fiction fans who appreciated the film's campiness and deviation from the typical gender stereotypes in a genre that is traditionally male-centered.
Yeah.
And I think that fits it to a T. And it's something that I appreciate about the Wachowskis, who... let's face it, started with leather and lots of guns. Lots of guns.
Yes.
Like, that's how they started. And they go from that to something like Sense8 that has a lot of different characters of different sexes, different orientations, or something with Jupiter Ascending that, even though it is a shooty sci fantasy, deals with things like egg donation and pregnancy.
Right.
Family. The heroine literally solves a problem with a maxi pad.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't see that in like Rambo. Rambo would
Right.
die before he staunched the bleeding of his wounds with a maxi pad. But the fact that they bring that sort of outside perspective to it is something that we need more of. Which leads to my question: is this YA? Would you consider this like young adult fiction? It feels to me like this could have come from and Ascendant,
Sure.
Hunger Gamey, whatever those books. I don't really read them, but
Maze Runner.
Maze Runner. Yeah, there you go.
I was trying to think of like some other big franchise that was like that.
Compliant. What are they called? What are the ones? They're set in Chicago and they're on trains.
Yeah, Allegiant and
the
other one.
Is that what it is?
There's 3 of them. I feel like calling it YA, like not to say that YA isn't interesting, but like I feel like calling it like that kind of demeans it a little bit.
Cheapens it, maybe.
Yeah, cheapens it.
Huh, okay.
Because I think that
there's a lot of Trumbler people that would disagree with you.
Sure. I mean, because obviously there you're trying to play to a younger audience, and I think that this, if you're an adult who's had time to kind of move through that adolescence phase and has spent time, looking at other aspects of the genre and seeing little elements of that in this movie, I think there's more there for you than you'd expect from a YA. Like, YAs have oftentimes really great stories in sci-fi, but they shy away from developing to that super deep level because they want the journeys to be important to the specific characters. They want you to be able to see yourself in those characters.
Sure.
And that journey is the most important thing. But, in this, I think half the fun of it is getting to experience this cool, crazy world and all the stuff that's in it. And, as a lifelong sci-fi fan and fantasy fan, that's a ton of fun for me.
Yeah.
So I really like that aspect of it.
Well, I think by that criteria, Star Wars is YA.
Sure.
It's the same thing. It's a crazy world. It's simple characterizations. It's seeing a character go from being a naif to having a little more control over his or her world. And so, I don't think there's anything wrong with something being YA.
I would say Empire would be the adult version of A New Hope.
Okay.
In that sense.
Where does that leave Jedi then?
I think Jedi is the
Cartoon Network,
a clever fusion of the two.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I can see that.
So, yeah.
Well, I'm not a prepubescent girl, so the movie doesn't really affect me in that way.
Sure.
But I guess I understand it.
Yeah.
People have called it. We've called it campy. But the problem for me, I think the film is a little bit. I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying I see what's going on. I think the film and its fandom are engaging a little bit in what I call the camp dodge, which sounds like a 2-week retreat where you'd work on your dodgeball skills. But what I really mean is that
Ben Stiller.
Is that this movie was, I think, clearly completed in earnest. I think that they meant all this. I think that a lot of this was like, this is a big deal. Okay, you see what corporations do? They exploit people. They think they own the earth. They turn literal lifeblood into something that benefits the rich. I think that they really meant all this. And then when they show it and people laugh about it, they turn around and go, "Oh yeah, well we were trying to be funny. Like it's this camp. It's supposed to be funny." Kind of like The Room. Like Tommy Wiseau, he thought he was making something like really serious. Like this is my life. This is my heart on the page.
Yeah.
And the people laughed, and he goes, "Ha ha ha ha! It's funny. Yes, I make comedy."
Yeah.
It's like, but you weren't trying to make a comedy, though.
Yeah.
And I think that this movie totally works as something that is self-aware and camp, but I don't think it's that self-aware.
Yeah, I would agree.
I'm not trying to haul anybody off to jail. I just want us to be honest about what it is.
Yeah, I think if you're looking for a critique of society, I think the Matrix is a better Wachowski film for you in that sense. If you're looking for a commentary on the world we live in, there's better choices than this one.
You're saying there really is a thing in my belly that they're gonna a worm?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all true. You're hearing it here first.
So when I mentioned on Facebook that we were talking about this movie on the show, immediately a few of my fans who are the right age and are female were all like, "Oh, I love it. It's so camp." Mm-hmm. And I'm like, "Yeah, but it doesn't. It's camp in retrospect. Like it's you're enjoying it. I don't know if you know that you're enjoying it ironically. Like I don't think that the Wachowskis would set out to make something that was to be laughed at, or not laughed at, but to be appreciated sort of in that way. Because you watch Sense8, and Sense8 is also like, there's a lot of pathos. Like it takes itself very seriously, and there are lighter moments in it. But I don't, as far as it being like a camp masterpiece, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what my allergy to camp is.
Sure.
Show me on the doll where the Rocky Horror Picture Show touched you.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Right. Yes. Literally anywhere you can imagine. Let me make a comparison here. So, like, your epitome of camp is something like, Rocky Horror Picture Show or like Labyrinth or something like that, where you're going like really far into the outlandish, fun adventure. The other side for me is something like a Christopher Nolan film, where it's like if a character...
Oh, that's bathos. Like, that's going beyond the pale into like,
Right. That's the, far opposite scale. And I think there are some people who really like that sort of world where, like, characters aren't really allowed to have fun and, like, they're not willing to let these characters kind of experience something unusual or, like, a little bit odd.
Sure.
And, like, I love letting, the creativity flow in that sense. Mm-hmm. To be honest, most Christopher Nolan movies just don't do it for me. It's not they're not good storytelling, but there's just that kind of sense of, like, plotting purpose and, like, we are telling an important story. We are telling an important story.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, guys, just, like, can you stop to, like, have fun for a moment, please?
I'm really, like, at half and half on Christopher Nolan. Like, for me, the most the emotional and personal movies are my favorite. Like, I've heard people, like, take a crap on it, but I really do like Insomnia. Like, I really do think that it's, like, a, well-crafted film, and Al Pacino's really great in it. I like The Dark Knight because it's the closest we'll ever get to, like, Michael Mann doing a superhero movie. Like, I think it works in that way. But yeah, there's like, especially Dark Knight Rises. Like, I don't care about any of this.
Yeah.
He's climbing out of a hole. All right, great. How do you get back to Gotham? That's what I want to know. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe a discussion for another time. But
or
I feel like I brought up Christopher Nolan the last time I was on your show.
This guy hates Christopher Nolan.
Yeah. That's a weird coincidence, but oh well.
When he has a movie that doesn't do well, we can talk about it.
I just feel like one of the reasons that movies don't do well is because they're campy, because they're willing to be a little goofy and not take every single moment super seriously.
Yeah.
And there's some people that
I think Christopher Nolan would
do
just
exactly as you're describing. Like, it's like an allergic reaction where they
he
shrink
would,
away and say, "Oh, my everything is broken. I can't watch this anymore."
He would literally break up into little pieces and just fall into an empty suit on the ground. I think if he ever was able to do that, I don't think he can do that.
Right.
And that is an important tool, I think, in the filmmaker's toolbox. You know, that to have as a director. So you brought me back. You did it.
Yeah.
I'm okay with this movie with the lady with deer ears.
Yeah.
She's a deer? What? She's part deer? How does that... Why would you splice that? What is that good for?
Maybe run really fast?
Yeah. She can hold really still.
Have very good
and listen
hearing.
for danger.
Yeah.
She's a good listener. We'll just say that.
8-foot vertical leap.
Yeah, right. I want to talk really quick about the astrology that is present kind of in the film.
Okay.
I mean, clearly, like, even the title, she talks in the beginning about
how... you meant astronomy, not astrology.
Yeah, really.
Just checking. I was like, okay. And then my brain was going like, wait a minute, where was astrology in this movie?
Well, because she's born under, the sign. And from what I understand, like, Jupiter rising, on your chart is supposed to be a symbol of prosperity, and wealth, which, she's queen of the earth, what that's worth. And her dad is an astronomer, which means that he would,
another great character actor that I was sad to watch die on
James
screen.
Darcy, who dies brutally in this.
Yeah.
Speaking of bathos, like, it's just like ridiculous. Said, "Oh, honey, let's name her Jupiter." Bam! Give me all your fucking money.
They saw his gold-plated telescope.
Take that telescope.
Knew they had to have it.
Yeah, we saw that in the window. Yeah. Who later on, Jupiter's going to get one off of eBay, and the starting bid is $4,000, $39.99. And she's got $5,000. I don't know if she or the Wachowskis have ever eBayed, but she's not going to get that telescope.
Yeah.
That's going to go up before that. It's going to get sniped for sure. But so the astronomer dad would probably hate astrology, at least I hope so.
Yeah.
But there are, like, mythological or sort of esoteric references. Even the name of the family, the Abraxas. I had to look this up, but, like, Abraxas is like a figure in, like, Gnosticism.
Oh, interesting.
And it's supposed to be like this great archon or like this great spirit of like this invisible world, which I think kind of makes sense. In sort of Gnostic or like Kabbalistic kind of ways, like the 7 letters in his name are supposed to add up to like the 7 known planets, of the Gnostic time. So there's that. In isophacy, which is like the Greek practice of like adding up the letters in your name or in words to make a number. It adds up to 365, which are sort of like the days of the year, which also fits with astrology and the calendar and stuff like that. So that was clearly chosen for a reason. I just don't know.
Kubrick-esque conspiracy funsies.
There you go. Yeah. What's the Room 237 version of Jupiter Ascending? So there's all
I have to take it aside. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Please do.
But it's that image you mentioned before of like the dude in front of a bookshelf who wants to tell you his opinion just like keeps roaring back into my head. Just how spot on that is. And I keep thinking like, what would that dude in front of the bookshelf think about this as we're talking about it?
Well, I said that there are a few videos on YouTube, but there are not videos. There are videos on YouTube, and most of them...
there are millions of those videos.
Most of them have to do with the stuff I'm talking about. Like, I saw one video that I got about 5 minutes into and was like, I'm okay. I can't join another cult this year.
Yeah.
But this lady goes on for...
What was the first one?
Well, this lady goes on for like 40 minutes about the magical symbolism of Abraxas and that sort of thing. And I guess my question is, do you think that John Travolta saw this movie and like punched through a straw hat? Because this is exactly what he was trying to do with like something like Battlefield Earth. Like once this was over, if you sat me down and told me, all right, now we have this religion, it's called Galaxology, and all this stuff is real. Like humanity really does come from somewhere else, and they own all the planets and stuff like that. And I'd be like, oh yeah, okay, now it all makes sense. Like it feels like, I don't want to get us shut down, but it feels like Scientology to me.
A little bit, yeah.
Like if this was, I don't know, maybe the Wachowskis aren't letting us in on the whole picture.
Well, I mean, and
he made deer people. It's like, I just feel like
a lot of their movies kind of revolve around that conspiratorial aspect too.
That there's something we don't know about.
Yeah,
there's a hidden world,
right? And that, the Matrix is obviously the biggest and brightest of those stars. Yeah, but that's resonant here and V for Vendetta as well. So I mean,
which was adapted by them, but wasn't an original idea. Of course, it came from the graphic novel. So
yeah, I mean, it's different from the graphic novel.
Yeah,
I've had some good, very long discussions with fans about pluses and minuses of that and how it works versus the comic, which is again maybe a discussion for another day. But,
yeah, I don't have a whole like Charlie Day chart of like how their releases, but it does seem like they've got like an original idea, then they'll adapt some stuff in their own sort of inimical style, and then do their own thing again. So I bet they're probably working on something right now.
Sure.
They just, with the underperformance of this, nobody's beating down their door to do adaptations of their own work right now. So this would normally be where we would get an anime or a graphic novel adaptation before their next thing.
Yeah. When I heard that Robert Rodriguez was making the Battle Angel Alita adaptation, I was like, were the Wachowskis not available?
They were sleeping on that one, yeah.
It seems like right up their alley. That would have been something they would have loved, I bet.
With James Cameron producing.
Yeah.
Maybe, I guess they don't have the hookup with James Cameron. Maybe they don't work together.
Could be.
Which is too bad. I'd like to see what would come out of that. But one more thing, I mentioned that, Titus is very Shakespearean, I suppose. I'm not sure what Kalik is really supposed to be. But Balaam is a biblical figure. He's the guy whose donkey talked to him. Because an angel of the Lord was in the road, and the donkey was trying to avoid him. And Balaam kept hitting the donkey, and eventually God let the donkeys talk. The donkey's like, "Stop hitting me!" Or maybe he sounded like Eddie Murphy. I don't know. That's the thing that I always heard in Sunday school. But then I went down a rabbit hole and learned that he's this really nuanced figure in in a Torah tradition, a Talmudic tradition, and a biblical tradition, and also in like magical tradition, where he's this like evil prophet kind of like has the gifts of an Old Testament prophet, but he doesn't use them in good ways necessarily, and he's just sort of hated figure in some circles, but liked in others. And I think that fits the idea of Balaam in the movie being an entitled, which they were ahead of the curve on that one. I think there's a lot of talk about like entitlement and privilege and that sort of thing today. That I think they definitely knew where things were going. A character who has all this wealth and privilege and is using it to do horrible things. Right. Here's a question that I have for you. At the end of the movie, Jupiter has got her queenship. It hasn't changed her though. She's still old Jupe. Balaam's gone. The red spot has blown up or is still there or whatever. Is she going to change the practices of the Abraxas Industries family? Like, are they still harvesting all this restaurants? Are they still liquidating people? It's people! That's what I'm asking.
I think it's open to interpretation there, unfortunately. They don't tell us. They don't hand it to you on a silver platter. Michael Bay style.
Was that them like, Michael Bay? I used to say that Christopher Nolan was like the pseudo-intellectuals like Michael Bay, like the thinking man Michael Bay.
He's Shyamalan for the intellectual.
Yeah. I think that the Wachowskis, at least on this film, and maybe other films, are like the Michael Bay for the Tumblr set.
Sure.
Like, they'll take some of these ideas and then they'll give you all this bombast on top of it.
Yeah. One of the comparisons that I missed an opportunity to jump in on before that I was going to make to like Transformer films remind me of the Transformers in the sense that we're blowing up buildings or like attacking stuff with the ships flying around. But in Michael Bay movies, they like focus on like, isn't it cool that these things are flying around and doing this thing? And in this movie, it's very much like, here is the purpose of what they're doing. They're trying to get from here to here, or this thing is important and they're trying to protect that thing, or these creatures are trying to, enter this place and we have to prevent that. Yeah. There's very much like an objective-based fight, which makes it more interesting in my mind.
Yeah.
And it's not just, how many times, can we count off Optimus Prime throwing another robot through a building?
Yeah. They did give themselves that one scene where they blow up Chicago, basically. Yeah. That was like all right, let's stretch our wings. Let's see what we can do, which apparently took 6 months to film.
Wow.
Yeah, just that one sequence. As we get near the end here, anything left unsaid about the film?
Boy, I mean, if you like sci-fi, if you like campy, you'll probably enjoy this movie. Yeah. If you haven't watched it and you've somehow managed to get through this whole podcast without feeling like we've spoiled literally the whole film for you.
Yeah, I mean, you could spoil like specific occurrences, but you can't spoil the spectacle that is this film.
Yeah,
I mean, you're definitely looking at something.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth a watch, honestly, if you're into that sort of a thing. And yeah, I think it's a little underrated, in my opinion. I don't think it's, the next big thing or the greatest thing that's ever been in this sci-fi universe, but I think it doesn't really deserve the pan that it got. I think it's plenty decent. Yeah. If the Maze Runner, the Divergent films can get 3 films, I've seen
Divergent. That's what it is.
Yeah, I've seen Maze Runner, the first one. I haven't seen any of the Divergent films, but like, if those films can get made, to the level that they were made, I'm sure there's somebody out there who would dig this the way that I dig it. Yeah.
I pity, there's a guy named Grant Hill he's usually like the third producer credit on their films. He's their line producer, has worked with them on almost all their films. I pity him having to set up things like the 6-month shoot like in Chicago, or I'm sure they weren't on location the entire time. There's they shoot in the Natural History Museum. There's a cathedral somewhere, I think, that is the space ship that Titus has, which is amazing, but he must have done a lot of hard work on this. The candle budget alone, there's a couple different scenes where it's just like 2,000 candles, here we go. Yeah. The costumes, are amazing. Yeah. And there's a thing in this film that the Wachowskis have done previously. I think it got cut out of the Matrix films, but they kind of hint that the long-lived people of the Empire or whatever, the Abraxas Corporation, were inspiration for like vampires, and it'd be easy to see how splices would be like werewolf myth, origins. And there's a thing in I think it was only in the video game of the Matrix where they talk about how werewolves and vampires are like from previous versions of the Matrix, so just kind of stuck around. So, and they there's a nod to crop circles in this, and there's definitely things that are like, huh? What about that?
Yeah.
What if these guys killed the dinosaurs?
I would love to see a film, set in medieval times in this universe.
Oh, yeah.
With like,
Yeah.
a family war that ends up, spilling over onto Earth. So like there are things that where they're saying, oh, it's a vampire, oh, it's a werewolf, and it's these splices or things that would be really interesting.
Yeah.
And you still get your sci-fi from the family that are hiding amongst the people of Earth.
Yeah, I love those anachronisms when you see those in books, or something like that.
Right.
Fan fiction. There should be more fan fiction for this film. I went to the Jupiter Ascending Wiki because there is one, and it's only like 75 pages.
Huh.
Like I think there's more entries on the cast list for the IMDb page than that. So come on, fans! If you really love this thing, get rolling on it.
Yeah.
Let's head to our segment where we check on the state of the robot holocaust. As I've explained on the show earlier, I have a theory that if a film opens with excessive voiceover, has overly long title cards, or opens over water. You know that shot where it's like you're panning up over a lake or a river or something. You got Lake Michigan in this. You know that's probably not going to be a good movie. And I need to amend something, add one more thing to that. Any film where the titles are present in some way in the world of the film. There's a fad that I think it's died down now, but it was in like the late 90s or early aughts. They do this thing where they render the credits, like the titles, in 3D. So if you're panning over a city, it's like on top of a building. And it doesn't move with the camera, it's like just stationary. You're going to pass by these giant words. Whenever I see that, I'm like, oh, we're in trouble here. I don't think this is going to be a very good movie. This film kind of has that. The main title,
they do the letters that rotate in
the Riddick turnout,
yeah.
And they eclipse the sun, so they're clearly like they exist in that world. But that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And there's a little VO to begin with. To set up her origin story, but I think if it is a once upon a time fairy tale, that's kind of a fair cop too. So I think in this case we are safe from the robot holocaust at this point in time. But I'm more worried about animal people, like that chicanery knight. I don't trust that guy.
Yeah.
Seems like he's not very trustworthy.
I have a naming streak like that too, where I'll go with like super wacky names. I remember there was a moment in one of the tabletop, like a D&D game that I was running, and I introduced my new villain, Interfector Vasilis, and the people at my table are like, oh fuck this guy. It's like, that's not a name, that's some bullshit. This guy's gonna die. Like before they even had any interaction with this character, as soon as they heard the name, they're just like, fuck that guy. We're gonna kill him immediately.
Right.
So, and I thought it was a cool name. Latin, Interfectus, killing, and
right.
Vasilis, because he's like a mage who can control, like energy of, the human body and like life energy and stuff like that.
Sure.
So I thought, okay, it's cool. So it's like this kind of, fun, froofy name, and they're just like, nah, we hate it. So
right.
I can empathize with that position. Like, if it's not going to be important to the story, sure, name the characters whatever fun name you want.
You should fake them out and have like, oh, this is Dr. Nefaria bad guy. And they're like, oh, watch out. It's like he's the top contributor to the United Way from like he's like a total like philanthropist, and he's like the good guy that is going to give him the magic thing, and see if they don't kill him before that happens. I like torturing my players.
Yeah.
Other than the reasons that we've already stated, why do you think critics rejected this?
It's kind of that reaction that I was hinting at before. Like, it's campy. Like, if you're not willing to suspend some disbelief and, ignore some plot holes or like some goofy stuff that happens, then I don't think you'll make it past the first act without, kind of souring your opinion right away. But
Yeah. One of the criticisms that I heard of the film is that, and maybe people were just, digging for things to complain about, but was that it borrowed from other films. They felt like they saw a lot of elements of stuff, other sci-fi movies and things like that in this. And I don't know, anytime you're going to do a fairy tale-esque tale, you're going to reach into archetypes where there's just going to have to be things that other people have touched before. You're not going to get away from that. how do you copy Bees Can Sense Royalty? I mean,
Yeah.
like it or hate it,
Yeah.
that's original.
Yeah, and it's a cool idea.
Yeah. Let's look at a couple reviews at the time for the film. And, of course, this was fairly recent, so I didn't have to dig too far for these. But Charlie Jane Anders for IO9 actually was
Former
not very...
Convergence Guest of Honor.
Yes, Convergence Guest of Honor was not very positive on this. And in her review said, if you need to care even a little about the characters or stakes in order to have fun watching a movie, then you're in for a disappointment here. Did not have any positive feelings about the film. Moving up the scale a little bit, nothing wrong with the IO9, but let's go to The New Yorker. Richard Brody, writing for The New Yorker, said, the Wachowskis create a churning, swooping CGI universe that's decorated to the corners of the frame without taste or imagination. I mean, that's just...
I feel like that's
incorrect.
Yeah, that's not correct.
Yeah.
If you want to criticize, plot, or if you want to criticize, wanting more character development from your heroes, sure, I see those criticisms.
Sure.
But if you want to criticize originality or, flavor of the film, I think you're off base.
Yeah, I don't know if that was written for something else and then we'll just plug Jupiter in, but I don't know how you could say that it doesn't have imagination.
Yeah.
Moving to the fresh side, not everybody hated it. Writing for Grantland, Wesley Morris, a critic that I like a lot. I don't always agree with him. I feel like he takes things to task, though, when they deserve it. Was positive about the film. He said, upon exiting, my weary delight with Jupiter Ascending coexisted with pure bafflement, but I exited knowing that I'd seen a movie no other filmmaker could have made. Which is something that I think I'd agree with.
Sure.
As you can imagine, the Razzies had a field day with this one, nominating it for Worst Picture, Actor, Actress, Supporting Actor, Director, and Screenplay. And Eddie Redmayne
I'm sure there was dumber junk that came out that year.
Oh, there must have been. 2015? Come on. But Eddie Redmayne actually won Worst Supporting Actor Razzie for this film, which you'd have to imagine is... If somebody that won the best... It's a Halle Berry situation, right?
Yeah.
She won for Monsters Ball, so we're going to hit her for Catwoman for sure. She's not going to get out of that one alive.
Yeah.
So deserve it or not, that was the result of that. Let's look at final recommendation. Would you recommend this or would you not recommend it?
I would.
Masterpiece or disaster piece?
I mean, it's neither. It's a fun, pulpy sci-fi movie that has some holes. And, if you're into fun, pulpy sci-fi movies, you'll probably enjoy it. Mm-hmm. What I will say is if you saw this and you liked it or you loved it, you should immediately go watch Valerian. Because Valerian is like this movie on crack. Like, it's... And that may be another discussion for another day.
Possibly.
But I loved Valerian just for how, willing it was to play wild and loose with the rules of the universe and the characterizations within it.
Sure.
So if you liked that aspect of this movie, that's definitely there. Because that movie also has plenty of plot holes and weird dumb lines, but it's just fun the whole time.
Yeah. Luc Besson, another guy that is very imaginative. He's an idea guy, but maybe not getting into the nuts and bolts of working with actors and dialogue and stuff like that. Yeah, I bet everybody who wrote a bad review of Jupiter Ascending was like, could I just find him replace Valerian and get paid twice for this thing?
Yeah.
Well, maybe it'll be on the show in the future. We don't know. I'd call this a masterpiece in terms of hit or miss. A miss is not a failure necessarily, and this definitely didn't find a wide audience, but I'd agree. Every time, I've seen this maybe 2 or 3 times now, and every time I watch it, I like it more. And I'm almost afraid to watch it again because I don't want to become a big jupe head or whatever the fans call themselves. Yeah. But yeah, it is something that if you haven't seen, I think you should check out. If you've already seen, do it again just to get it out, see what happens. Go on a second date with Jupiter and see if you can ascend together. That wrapped up pretty good. So that's it. Thanks for joining us on this episode. If you want to let us know how you felt about Jupiter Ascending, you can tell us on Facebook at facebook.com/Craft Craft Disservices. Remember, there are 2 S's in the middle of Disservices. We're also on Twitter and catch this, everything's confusing, we're at Craft Disservice, no S, on Twitter. Ran into a character limit there. We're also on iTunes. You can search for Craft Disservices there and subscribe, rate, and review us. It helps us out a lot, and we're also on Google Play and Stitcher and all that good stuff. Jacob, where can people find you and Hot Chocolate Media online?
Absolutely. You can find us at hotchocolatemedia.net. You can also find us at facebook.com/hotchocolatemedia or on Twitter at hotchalkmedia. It's just chocolate, but right at at the C.
Why doesn't Twitter let your name
limit.
be as long as you want it to be?
Yeah.
Come on.
You can also feel free to email me if you wish, if you have something specific you're interested in. Jacob at hotchocolatemedia.net.
Cool. And people should check or look for you at Convergence.
Yes,
again,
please
they can
do.
find that at convergence-con.org. Well, that sounds great. That's it for our show. The credits are rolling. This is Aaron for Jacob saying, I create life! And I destroy it.